Maharani ki Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, sloka number 13. Nyeyam yattat pravakshami, Nyeyam yattat pravakshami, Yajñātvamritamashnuté, Yajñātvamritamashnuté, Anadimat param brahma, Anadimat param brahma, Nasattanna saduchyate, Nasattanna saduchyate. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So, very interesting. Krishna is saying that I shall now explain something, okay, the knowable. So, what are the knowables? We will see in just a minute, okay. But knowing which, what will you get? By this knowledge, yat jnatvam ashnute. By this knowledge, you will get amrita. You will taste the eternal, which means you will taste nectar or amrita. Okay, so what is that? So, what are the knowables? Let us look here. Okay, so when Krishna says, I shall now explain the knowables, he means that he shall now explain the objects of knowledge. What are these objects of knowledge? The objects of knowledge are two: the spirit soul, which is us, the living entity, and the super soul. So, again, two objects of knowledge: the spirit soul and the super soul. So, in this shloka, Krishna describes about the spirit soul, and in the next shloka, he will describe the super soul. Okay, so what is it that we can understand about the spirit soul? Why does Krishna say that once we understand this knowledge, we can taste nectar? Because if we understand about the spirit soul, ourselves, and the super soul, and the relationship between the spirit soul and the super soul, then we can re-establish our forgotten relationship of the Lord. Once we re-establish of our forgotten relationship of the Lord, then we can break this cycle of birth, death, old age, disease, this BDOD cycle. I like to call it the BDOD cycle, the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. We can break this cycle. Okay, and when we break this cycle, what happens? We can go back home, back to Godhead, to Krishna himself. Excuse me. Thus, Krishna says we can taste nectar by knowing these objects of knowledge. Okay, now just a few more details about the spirit soul before we break for today. The soul, as we know, is eternal. Now, in which chapter, can one of you unmute and tell me, in which chapter did we learn in great detail about the qualities of the spirit soul? Anyone? Mataji's Prabhus, in which chapter did we learn in great detail about the knowledge?
Second chapter, Mataji.
Second chapter.
Second chapter, absolutely,
Second
yes.
chapter.
It is very correct. Thank you, Amrita Mataji, Prema Mai Mataji. In the second chapter, it's described in great detail. What are some of the qualities of the soul? Can it be broken?
No, Mataji.
No, Mataji.
No. It
No,
cannot be
Mataji.
blown away by the wind. It cannot be burnt by fire.
It's not perishable.
Is not perishable, cannot be moistened by water, it's insoluble, it cannot melt and all, right? So the soul is eternal, it cannot be destroyed by any means at all. In fact, when the body keeps changing, the soul is the same. We know this from Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara. The body changes from boyhood to youth to old age, but the soul remains the same throughout. And then when the body becomes useless, when the body becomes old, the soul moves to another body. Okay, so this is very important to understand the fact that the body is temporary, but the spirit soul is permanent. Yes, it's also important to understand that this spirit soul is part and parcel of the Lord. Krishna himself says in the 15th chapter, which we will be reading every day tomorrow onwards, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke. Mama, Amsa we know means is part. The spirit soul is part of me, is an amsa, is part of me. Mamhai vamso chivaluke. So we are part and parcel of Krishna. Okay, now the question arises, if we are part and parcel of Krishna, there must be some time when we got detached from him, or when we were created. Krishna would have created us at some point in time. The answer to this is it cannot be traced. Okay, when the Lord created all of us, when the Lord created the living entities, this cannot be traced. The Lord and the living entities, meaning the Lord and all of us, we have existed simultaneously through eternity. That's why Krishna says in this shloka, the soul is anadi, beginningless. One who has no beginning is called anadi. The Lord is anadi. All of us are also anadi. So this is one knowable, the spirit soul. Okay, so now we are all knowers of our own bodies, right? We are spirit souls, we are living entities, we know our own body. But the Paramatma, the super soul, he is the chief knower. He knows all bodies, and he controls the three modes of material nature. And what is our constitutional position as living entities? So we learned about how the super so about the spirit soul, how it is eternal, it is never breakable. So what is our eternal duty? Our eternal swarupa, our eternal duty, as we have been saying several times in our daily classes, we are actually servants of Krishna. Krishner Nitya Das. This has to be understood very, very clearly. This is our takeaway for today. We are servants of Krishna. This is the problem that we are facing. We are actually servants of Krishna, but we think ourselves to be masters and controllers. Okay, so as servants of Krishna, this is why we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the meaning of it is very important for us to understand. The meaning is, O energy of Krishna, O Radharani, O Krishna, please engage me in your service. So we are eternal spirit souls. Krishna is the eternal super soul. And this Maha Mantra is the eternal mantra, where we are actually asking the Lord eternally to be in his service. So it's always about service. By chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we can revive our original identity, be re-established in our constitutional position, and we will serve Krishna in that mood as his servant. So today, dear devotees, we learned about the first object of knowledge, which is the spirit soul. And in the coming shlokas, Krishna will speak about the second object of knowledge, which is the super soul, the Paramatma. So do stay tuned for very interesting explanations of this 13th chapter. And as we discuss tomorrow onwards, we will be having our Purushottam month special program. So do stay tuned. Do tune in every morning at 6 a.m. so we can chant together and hear Bhagavad Gita and do our Purushottam Vrat together tomorrow onwards, tomorrow, July 18th. I thank you all very, very much for joining us this Monday morning, and I hope you all have a blissful Krishna conscious day. Hare